Hello, I'm David Sunfellow, founder and president of New Heaven, New Earth, or NHNE, a small internet-based nonprofit. In January and March of 2012, I gave two presentations in Sedona, Arizona entitled, How Near-Death Experiences Are Changing the World. This video is a summary of those two presentations. I've created it for members of New Heaven, New Earth and also members of the general public who might be interested in learning more about this very important topic. Altogether, 16 different near-death experiences are featured on this two-part video. They have all been handpicked by me, first to give viewers a clear idea of just how diverse the NDE phenomena is, and second, to identify the themes, messages, and potentially life-changing insights that emerge from carefully examining this universal experience. All of the people, books, and resources that are mentioned in this video are clearly identified in the presentation itself or in the footnotes that accompany it. This will allow those of you who are interested to follow everything I share with you back to its source. The two presentations that took place in Sedona were co-sponsored by New Heaven, New Earth and the Mustard Seed Venture. What do these two organizations have in common? The answer is Jesus and his preoccupation with what he referred to as the kingdom of God. We found common ground when I realized that there was no other historical, spiritually oriented person that I was aware of who had more in common with the core truths presented by near-death experiences than Jesus. Here's a quick list of some of the things that Jesus has in common with near-death experiences. A laser-like focus on a peaceful, loving reality, what Jesus called the kingdom of God, that surrounds, infuses, and reigns over the hostile, everyone out for themselves, fear-based reality of this world. God was portrayed as a hands-on, loving, caring, forgiving, guiding, protecting, and profoundly personal presence. There was an emphasis on love and relationships, an emphasis on treating others as if they were and are ourselves, an emphasis on holding people accountable for their shortcomings, but doing so with great love and compassion. An encounter with Jesus often caused others to make radical changes in their lives, relationships, careers, beliefs, values, and goals. According to the records we have, Jesus produced miraculous healings. And Jesus also had the reported ability to bend and control the physical laws of this world. As you listen to the near-death experiences presented in this video, you'll notice that these themes repeat again and again, which leads to the very real possibility that whatever inspired Jesus 2,000 years ago is spreading out and touching down on a global scale today. Whereas in ages past, Jesus and others like him were lone voices in the wilderness, now there are untold millions all over the world experiencing, sharing, and pointing to very similar things. Many people, for many reasons, have an aversion to Jesus or Christianity. If you do, I encourage you to relax. This presentation is not about either. I will in fact be spending time in the second part of this video suggesting that many of the spiritual figures that people encounter in near-death experiences, including Jesus, are not necessarily who they appear to be. You'll see, as I did, that things are quite a bit more complicated and interesting. So be sure to watch the second part of this presentation before drawing any conclusions. All this sets the stage for $2 million questions. Can you and I experience the kingdom of God, the heavenly realms of light and love that probably inspired Jesus 2,000 years ago and that untold millions all over the world are experiencing today? And can near-death experiences, having them, sharing them, and applying their lessons in our lives help change, heal, and transform our world? In part one of this presentation, we're going to look at the history of near-death experiences, learn about their common characteristics, and hear firsthand several remarkable stories. While near-death experiences are increasingly common today, there are also records of these experiences in history. The oldest story we have comes to us from Plato's Republic. In the last chapter of his famous book, Plato recounts a story from Socrates of an ordinary soldier named Ur. Ur is killed in battle, and 12 days later, just before his body is burned, he returns to life with an amazing tale. Ur reports that his soul left his body and he went on a journey. Among other things, Ur encounters judges who separate those who live good lives from those who live selfish ones. Noble souls are sent to heavenly realms, while evil souls are sent to hellish ones. Ur also learned about reincarnation, discovered that souls are eternal, was shown how memories of the higher realms are erased when we come to earth. He was instructed on how to make good choices before returning to earth, and finally, Ur was told that it was his mission to return and tell others about what he'd learned. Although this story was recorded 2,400 years ago, many of the same themes appear in modern near-death experiences. What I think is especially worth noting about Ur's story is that it was clothed in the gods, goddesses, and sirens of his day in mythology. This is an important theme that is repeated again and again all over the world, past and present. While the core messages of near-death experiences are very similar, the visions that deliver these messages vary widely. Our next historical NDE is not a story per se, but a painting. It was produced by a Dutch artist who lived from 1480 until 1516. While no one knows the story behind his painting, which is called The Ascent into the Highest Heaven, it clearly depicts many of the key features associated with near-death experiences, including a brilliant white light, a tunnel, angels, and souls being drawn to the light. An admiral in the Royal Navy provides our next NDE. In the 1800s, after almost drowning, Admiral Beaufort was shown the effects his death would have on his father. Beaufort also described a classic life review. He wrote, "The whole period of my existence seemed to be placed before me in a kind of panoramic review, and each of it seemed to be accompanied by a consciousness of right or wrong, or by some reflection on its cause or consequences. Indeed, many trifling events which had been forgotten then crowded into my imagination." The last historical NDE I want to share with you is not actually a near-death experience at all. Instead, it is what has come to be called a near-death-like experience. People who have these kind of experiences report the same kind of events that occur in classic NDEs. They also report the same kind of life-changing after effects. The only difference is they do not die. Black Elk was a Lakota medicine man. While participating in a ghost dance at Wounded Knee, South Dakota in 1890, he describes leaving his body and visiting a heavenly land where his ancestors were said to live after their earthly lives came to an end. Here's what Black Elk said he saw. "I could see a beautiful land where many people were camping in a great circle. I could see that they were happy and had plenty. Everywhere there were drying racks full of meat. The air was clear and beautiful with a living light that was everywhere. All around the circle, feeding on the green grass, were fat and happy horses, and animals of all kinds were scattered all over the green hills, and singing hunters were returning with their meat. I floated over the teepees and began to come down feet first at the center of the hoop, where I could see a beautiful tree all green and full of flowers. When I touched the ground, 2 men were coming toward me, and they wore holy shirts. They came to me and said, 'It is not time yet to see your father, who is happy. You have work to do. We will give you something that you shall carry back to your people, and with it they shall come to see their loved ones.' They told me to return at once, and then I was out in the air again, floating fast as before. Then I fell back into my body." Here again we find classic near-death experience themes. Black Elk visits a heavenly realm where heavenly messengers tell him he must return to earth and share what he has seen. Like the near-death experience that Ur reported, we can also see how Black Elk's experience is clothed in the imagery of his time and culture. To learn more about the 4 historical NDEs I've shared here and others like them, you can visit NHNE Pulse. The link to this historical page is located here and in the footnotes below. Now that we spent a little time exploring historical NDEs, it's time to look at contemporary ones. Today's near-death experience movement began in 1943 when a 20-year-old Army private named George Ritchie died of pneumonia. While Ritchie didn't know it at the time, his near-death experience would eventually become the spark that ignited today's movement. I'll have more to say about that in a moment. First, let's listen to Ritchie describe his life review and encounter with Jesus, which included this haunting question: what have you done with your life?
Three things happened at the exact same moment. Something deep inside of my spiritual being, not the corpse lying over in the bed, said, stand up, you're in the presence of the Son of God. At that exact same instant, out of this brilliant light stepped the most amazing being I have ever met, and those hospital walls virtually disappeared. I saw every single minute detail of my life, everything I had ever done in public, in private, from seeing my own cesarean section birth through my 20th year when I was pronounced dead. And he threw a question, what had I done with my life? And I thought, well, I'm an Eagle Scout. Immediately he shot back, that glorified you. And the same question again, what have you done with your life? Now over there in that realm, there is no such thing as hypocrisy, because one of the first things that you become aware of is that the other being is totally aware of what you think, so you can't think one thing and say another. There's no such thing as misunderstanding what he meant. And yet, here was a being that knew everything about me, and he totally accepted me, and he totally loved me. Now that blew my mind.
I previously mentioned that George Ritchie's near-death experience ignited today's NDE movement. That's because Ritchie went on to become a doctor, and his path eventually crossed with another doctor by the name of Raymond Moody. When Dr. Moody heard Dr. Ritchie's story, he was so impressed that he began collecting the stories of other people who had similar experiences. In 1975, Moody published the results of his research, which was based on more than 100 NDEs. The book, which was dedicated to Dr. Ritchie, was called Life After Life. To date, it has sold over 20 million copies. And the rest, as they say, is history. Along with coining the term near-death experience, Moody's book and corresponding research launched today's near-death experience movement. 4 years after Moody published his groundbreaking book, Ritchie published a book that described in detail his remarkable near-death experience. Ritchie's book was called Return from Tomorrow. Like many of the near-death experiencers that are featured in this video, I have created a special page for George Ritchie on the NDE Stories website. Among other things, this page includes links to Ritchie's book, a written account of his experience, and a longer version of the video that we just watched. Raymond Moody's best-selling book was published 37 years ago. Since then, there have been many books published on this topic, and many more are coming out every day. Likewise, increasing numbers of people from all over the world are now having and reporting near-death experiences. How many? A 1992 Gallup poll indicated that 13 million Americans, or 5% of the population, had experienced an NDE. That works out to 774 people a day in America. And these statistics are from 20 years ago, when fewer people were experiencing NDEs and when those who did were reluctant to talk about them. A poll that was conducted in Germany in 2001 indicated 4% of the population had experienced an NDE. A 2005 poll that was conducted in Australia revealed the highest incident of NDEs at almost 9%. These polls indicate that large numbers of people are experiencing NDEs, but polling is an old-fashioned way to acquire accurate numbers. The Internet and people like Dr. Jeffrey Long are giving us new, more accurate and comprehensive ways to collect and analyze NDE stories. Long's organization, called the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, has created a website that allows people to submit written accounts of their experiences. Based on the information collected from this website, Long published a book called Evidence of the Afterlife. His book, which analyzed 1,300 NDEs from people all over the world, is the largest study to date. By the time Long's book was published, his website contained 1,600 NDEs. Now, 2 years later, this number has almost doubled to 3,000. According to Long's research, The core NDE experience is the same all over the world. Whether it's a near-death experience of a Hindu in India, a Muslim in Egypt, or a Christian in the United States, the same core elements are present in all, including out-of-body experience, tunnel experience, feelings of peace, beings of light, a life review, reluctance to return, and transformation after the NDE. In short, the experience of dying appears similar among all humans no matter where they live. Long concludes, the results of the NDERF study finds that what people discovered during their near-death experience about God, love, afterlife, reason for our earthly existence, earthly hardships, forgiveness, and many other concepts is strikingly consistent across cultures, races, and creeds. Also, these discoveries are generally not what would have been expected from pre-existing societal beliefs, religious teachings, or any other source of earthly knowledge. While no two NDEs are identical, Long discovered that 12 elements repeat again and again, usually in consistent order. A PDF handout of the 12 elements of NDEs is included in the footnotes below. You can download this list and follow along with me as I summarize them now. Listed in the order of their occurrence, here are the 12 elements of NDEs that Dr. Long identified. 75% of the people in Long's study reported having an out-of-body experience. 74% heightened senses. 76% intense and generally positive emotions or feelings. 33% passing into or through a tunnel. 64% encountering a mystical or brilliant light. 57% encountering other beings, either mystical beings or deceased friends and relatives. 60% a sense of alteration of time and space. 22% a life review. 40% encountering unworldly heavenly realms. 56% encountering or learning special knowledge. 31% encountering a boundary or barrier. And finally, 58% return to the body, either voluntary or involuntary. Now that we've learned about the history of NDEs, know that they are being reported with increasing frequency by people all over the world, and also know a little bit about the main elements that consistently occur during these experiences. Let's listen as several people share their stories.
My husband was by my bed, and I saw that light, and then I remember kind of looking at him. So I was like, okay, so I see this light, but I'm not dreaming. And so then all of a sudden I closed my eyes, and I was thinking, is that the tunnel that the cancer patients used to tell me about? Because it is not impressive. Like, it was so small. And then all of a sudden it came larger, and I folded into it. And I was in it. And it's a warm, incredibly warm, loving feeling, and you're not afraid. And I was moving through it, but I wasn't being sucked, but it was just like I was moving through the tunnel. I don't remember my whole body being part of it, nor do I remember really caring. Like, I felt totally me. But I don't remember paying special attention, like, is my body going with me? Do I have eyes? Are my ears? I just remember going through it. And then I came out into this room. And the room was magnificent. And I don't even know what else to tell you. It was, I shouldn't even say it was a room, because I didn't see any walls. And nor did I see any limitations. But I had the sense it was a room, and it was a very brilliant color. There's not an earth color to say what it is. I don't even know. I call it pink because it had a hint of a soft, because if you think of brilliant, you think of harsh. But this room was not harsh. It was soft, and mostly it was so accepting and loving. And I remember then that something holds me. I don't remember how I got there, but something is holding me, because I can feel it physically around me. And it says, Mary Jo, you cannot stay. And I say, why? Or first I was upset. I said, what? And it said, you cannot stay. And then I said, why? And this voice that I don't see his face, I can't tell you what it looks like because I have no idea. It says to me, you can't stay because you have more to do. And I said, oh, more to do? And he goes, yes, you haven't given enough. And I said, I haven't given enough. And I started talking about every human acolyte I could think. I started saying, you know, I work at that cancer center. I only get paid $600 a month. I'm on 24/7 call. There's nobody that can't call me in the middle of the night, and I actually answer the phone and talk to him. Everything possible that I could brag about on a tombstone, I talked to this God about. And then God says, well, let me ask you one question. And then it says, have you ever loved any person the way you've been loved in this short time here? And I said, no, it's impossible. I'm just a human. And it kind of chuckled. It wasn't human, but it was able to relate to me in a very human way that made me feel loved. And it wasn't laughing at me, but it was a chuckle, like it had a playful edge, and it said, you can do better. And then I remember waking up, and Ron was crying, and he's got this form of what they give you when you're going to have surgery. And he's like, Mary, you know, we got to go over this form. I need to know that you know what I'm saying. And then Ron goes, Mary, listen, you know, you could die. You're really sick, and they're going to have to do surgery on you. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to die, because I just talked to God and He won't let me.
Were you a skeptic before this about
yes.
this? You were?
Yes, I was working with cancer patients prior to this happening. I was getting ready to move to Houston. I was probably at the lowest point in any faith. I had seen terrible things in that cancer center. People dying, and when I would go in and they would tell me they saw things, I would respond. I would just sit there, and they would say, can you see them? And I'd say, no, I can't see them. Then I would leave the room and tell the resident, you better check their morphine.
Those patients that you were there with who said they too had now seen heaven or God or the tunnel, and you turned your back on them.
Well, I was present with them, but the sense I turned my back is when I would leave the room, I would tell the resident, I think you better get a morphine level on them, because I think they're hallucinating.
So you thought there's other stories from people where they thought they'd gone to heaven, that they're just hallucinating?
Had I seen them now, those patients who were telling me they were seeing angels, I would have embraced that and said, really? Let's talk about it. Tell me. Because they were telling me what God looked like as they were going.
What do you say to people that are still doubters about this?
I say that you relieve my guilt that I have. In a way, I embrace the doubters, because I feel a lot of guilt about how I used to look at it. And somehow, when people doubt the story, I can say, see, they're in medicine too, and they doubted, and that's why I was the way I was.
Hi, my name is Andy Petro. I want to talk to you today about an experience that I had a few days before graduation. We went to a senior class picnic just prior to graduation, and in that picnic event, during that picnic event, I was swimming out to a raft by myself, got cramps, I drowned, I died, I went into the light, and then I came back again. What I'd like to describe to you is the process of dying. First of all, the drowning process was not a fun process. It was horrible, it was painful. I was stuck at the bottom of the lake. I had aches and pains in every cell of my body. I didn't know what else to do. I was screaming internally for one breath of air. All I wanted was one breath of air, but I couldn't get it. And then a voice inside of my head said to me, Andy, called me Andy. It said, Andy, you need a rest, just for a moment. And I said to the voice, no, I don't think I want to rest. I have to get up for the air. And in trying to get up, I found that I was stuck in the mud. My hands were stuck in the mud. I couldn't pull them out, and I'm imprisoned. And then the voice said to me again, Andy, you can continue the struggle, but you want to rest for just one moment. And so I said to the voice, okay, all right, I'll give it a rest for just a minute, and then I'm going to continue. I'll let go. And as soon as the word go formed in my mind, I was pulled out of my body. And all of a sudden, I looked down and I could see my body stuck in the mud. But I'm in a body. I can feel it. No longer am I cold and freezing and stuck in the mud, but I'm warm and I'm filled with a love and a peace that I cannot explain. So in less than a microsecond, from freezing, cold, horrible pain, I was filled with love and peace and happiness and smiles. And as I looked opposite from my body, looked up into the tunnel, there I saw light. The light was so bright that it was brighter than 10,000 suns. And I immediately said, this should be burning my retinas. But it wasn't. It was a gentle but powerful light. It was pulling me. It was pulling me like a gentle magnet, closer and closer. And the closer I got, the more I was filled with an ecstasy, with a love, with an unconditional love of me as Andy. And as I got closer to the light, all of a sudden, I popped into a giant sphere. It was about the size of a basketball coliseum. And I was suspended in the middle of this sphere. And all around me, at all parts of the sphere, up, down, sideways, left, right, all over, were miniature motion pictures of my lives and what was going on. And I could see, I could touch, I could feel, I could sense every emotion that was taking place in all of those lifetimes. And when I would concentrate on one, I would immediately be there. I would be reliving what I had lived. And I would remember the reliving. And then I would think about another area, and then I'd pop into another movie. And I would do this for some period of time, but you have to understand that when you're in the eternal now, time doesn't make any sense. So it isn't time like yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's happening all the time, all at once. And I was there for an extended period using earth terms. And then all of a sudden I popped out of the sphere, and now I'm in front of the light. And the light is so warm and so glowing and so forgiving. And the light had no judgment. There was no condemnation. There was no blaming, no shame. There was nothing but love and acceptance. And the light was viewing me. The light knew everything that I ever thought, did, or will do. It knew everything. And the light welcomed me. And the light said, Andy, don't be afraid. And I was impressed. I mean, the light knew me and called me by my name. Called me Andy. Oh, that's pretty good. And then the light said, Andy, I love you. And then the light said, Andy, we love you. Now when the light said, Andy, we love you, I looked in back of the light. And the light was a huge, giant form that I've never seen on earth and that I cannot describe. But I recognize it, and I can see it right now in my mind's eye. And as the light said to me, Andy, we love you, in back of the light were billions and billions and billions of other lights. And all of them knew me. And they all said in a giant chorus, welcome home, Andy. And I said out loud, I'm home. At last I'm home. And the light welcomed me. The light absorbed me into the light. So I was part of the light. And once I was in the light, I knew everything the light knew. I knew all about the universe. I knew everything. About flowers, about plants, about asteroids, about suns, about novas, everything. I didn't have a question for the light. Why? Because I know all the answers. I had nothing to ask. And we laughed and we played. And by the way, the light has a fantastic sense of humor. We would view some of the really silly things that I did in my lifetime, and we'd be laughing at how serious I took them. Because life down here is an illusion. It's a game. Don't take it so serious. The life has a wonderful sense of humor. And we're laughing and we're talking, we're just having a great time, and then the light says to me, Andy, you have to go back. Now, I'm not going back. I said to the light, I don't think so. I'm home. I'm staying. And then the light said to me for the second time, Andy, you're going back. And I said, no, you don't understand. I don't want to go back into that body. I don't want to go back on earth. I'm home here in the light. And then the light said for the third time, Andy, you're going back. And as soon as I heard the K from the back, I was pushed back into my body, filled with pain and anxiety. And during all of that process, I was now on the beach, and my friends were pushing the water out of my lungs, and I was coughing the water out, and I was completely conscious. And I was crying. And all of my classmates thought I was crying from the pain of drowning. But I was crying because I was no longer in the light. I was back in my body. I was back on earth. I wanted to be in the light. During this entire episode, from the moment I start sinking into the water and the mud, up until the moment I was coughing water out of my lungs on the beach, I never lost consciousness. I was aware of every microsecond of that time. Being in the light was being in unconditional love. Unconditional love means unconditional forgiveness. Unconditional forgiveness causes you to smile forever. That's the story, folks. That's what it feels like to die and come back again. Thanks for listening.
On Columbus Day, 1985, I was in a fatal car crash. It was a head-on collision. I was driving down the road. Another car was coming the other way. We were going through an intersection. At the last minute, he decided to turn left right in front of me. Bam. I think I had enough time to say, oh my God, didn't even get to say turning. Next thing I knew, I was looking down at the top of my car. It was like, whoa, this is really cool. Now, fortunately, I had heard about out-of-body experiences. I'd never had one, always wanted one. Suddenly, I was having one. So I looked down and I see my car crunched, and I saw the guy get out of his car and walk over to mine, reach in and turn my headlights off. Didn't quite know what that meant until later. And I suddenly lost interest in what was going on down there because I saw this white light over here, which I had heard about, fortunately, and I said, whoa, there's the white light, I'm going. And there was this tunnel that seemed very dark, but there was this great light at the end. And I really wanted to find out what was at the other side. And there was this feeling that was coming through this tunnel of love. And I just sort of thought, I want to go through that. And the next thing, I was through it. And I was in this place, but it wasn't a place like here. It was an environment, an atmosphere. And it was love. It was amazing. It was total bliss, total joy, total love, total acceptance.